Hey, day drinkers. It's Tuesday, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So, leave that bird alone. Leave it in the sink like my mom does and come and have a drink with us. This is like my wish fulfillment episode. I'm here to talk, or I'm not here. I'm here all the time. Diana Peterfreund is here to talk about her amazing YA series that's based kind of on the Clue universe. And if you were anything like me and anything like my dear best friends from school, you loved the Clue universe more than you can say. So this is going to be a lot of fun. It's also the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And, it's hard. I'm not going down to see my family. I live in Canada and I grew up in the States, and I'm one of those expats that's like Thanksgiving is, I could miss every other holiday, but Thanksgiving is really hard to miss. So I'm right there with you, with everybody else missing home and missing their mom's mashed potatoes and, violent games of spoons, which is what my family did. So enough of that sad stuff. Let's talk about In the Hall with the Knife. I'm going to read the back cover copy because someone has asked me to read the back cover copy so that people know what book we're talking about. And that's a fair point. That's a fair point. So here we go. One storm will change their lives forever if they survive the night. When a killer storm strikes at Blackbrook Academy, an elite prep school nestled in the woods of Maine, a motley crew of students, including Beth, Peacock Pica, Orchid McKee, Vaughn Green, Sam Mustard Maestor, Finn Plum, and Scarlet Mystery, are left stranded in the aristocratic mansion of campus with their headmaster. Hours later, his lifeless body is discovered in a pool of blood. With this group of students, nothing is as it seems, and everyone has a motive for murder. Fans of the Clue board game will delight in Diana Peterfreund's modern reimagining of the brand, its characters, and the dark, magnificent old mansion with secrets hidden within the walls. The game is on. No one is safe. It is as good as it sounds. Okay, here comes Diana. Ah.
Hi. Hi, day drinkers.
No, thank you for being here. Let's talk about this cocktail.
All right. So it's a Kentucky Flyer, and it's a beautiful mustard color.
If you use the right ingredients.
If you have, yeah. I'm not sure. So it's made with whiskey, bourbon, I think, if you're like a true Kentucky person, and lemon juice and maraschino liqueur. And then I put some scarlet cherries in here, and then my rainbow cup is going to have to deal with the other Clue colors. There's like green, peacock.
Yeah. You got it all right there. I made mine with Canadian whiskey, with rye whiskey, because the Tudor house in the book was like, in one of its many incarnations, was like a stop for Canadian booze runners.
Yes. And to be fair, I made mine with rye too, because that's what I had in the house. But but yeah, so I it's way up there in Maine, this little island where Blackbrook Academy is. And so I had to and since there's secret tunnels in there, I'm like, well, what would they have used those secret tunnels for? It's like booze. Obviously booze.
So this is a quick segue. What made you choose Maine and way up there, Maine?
That's a funny story, actually. So my they wanted, when they hired me to do this, they said, well, you've written boarding school books in the past, and I was like, I don't want to say no because you just hired me, but
That's a stretch.
I've written books set in college, which is like a very different scene than boarding school. So I didn't know a lot about boarding schools, but I have an amazing cousin who taught at a boarding school in middle of nowhere, Maine. And his is not an island. It was in like a little town that also is like basically in Canada. But he taught at this school. And so basically I just picked his brain. And then I used him as the model of headmaster body. And then I killed him. So,
I mean, you don't say it in the back cover copy, but for those of you joining us who are fans of the movie, the headmaster is Mr. Body.
Mr. Body, yeah. I mean, it's not a spoiler. His name is Mr. Body. Like, he's dead.
On the first page, you're like, no, this guy. Is Orchid a new character reflected in the game, or is that just a creation?
Yeah, that's actually probably the question I get most often is, oh, you made up Orchid all by yourself. And I was like, no, because the version of Clue you have is probably the one that's been in your closet since, I don't know, the 80s, the 90s, whatever. If you go to a toy store and buy a Clue now, you will see that Mrs. White is retired and Dr. Orchid is the sixth character, and she's like a little pink piece. But this is not unusual for Clue. They bring in new characters and bring out old characters all the time. They rewrite the backstories of the characters. Like I think Professor Plum is currently like a .com millionaire. Like there are so many different versions of the game. There's like an 80s VHS version of the game that was like, there was a Miss Peach and she was sort of like a Southern Belle. You know that one.
The 80s VHS version of the game, my best friend, Alicia, got for a birthday or Christmas. And there was a part of the book that was reminding me of the game. Did you ever see the VHS game?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. So, and then my daughter and I have this version that's like a mashup of Clue and Guess Who, you know, like that game with the board. And I actually like, don't tell Hasbro, but I kind of prefer it to regular Clue because you don't have to do all that sort of like boring moving around between the rooms. You kind of just go straight to the fun part. And one of the characters in that one is Monsieur Brunette, and he's like sort of French. He's got like a brown beret on, and you know that kind of thing. So there's lots of different characters, but they wanted me to use as my main six the characters in the that are currently like if you buy like just straight Clue. Like those, you know, peacock, plum, mustard, green, scarlet, and orchid. So those are my 6 point of view characters in the book.
You know,
there is a Mrs. White, and there's like some other people. There's a Silverman, there's a Gold, there's a Rusty, like all the characters.
Rusty Naylor.
Rusty Naylor was actually a real character from an older version of the game. So all the characters have color names. And actually, when I was on tour for In the Hall with the Knife, I would ask people for their best color names so that I could populate the rest of the school with like other people. Like everyone at the school has like a color name.
Yeah. Well, if you're listening, and Gail, I see your comment. I've gotten really good at this. Watch what I can do, Diana. There's her comment. Gail Yates had that VHS name. Gail, you and my friend Alicia, and maybe that. But if you've got a good color name, shout it out. If you have any questions too, if you are comments about I usually say this before, but I got so excited. Any comments, any questions, feel free to write it. And I've gotten pretty good at paying attention there. It occurs to me that I didn't actually know that any of those characters had backstories.
When you get the game in the instructions, they give you sort of the backstories, and it changes over the years, like who and what they are. Like Mr. Green used to be a Reverend Green. Like there's so many different versions of them, which is why I felt really free to make my own versions of them, you know, because it's not like canon, like Star Wars or something, you know, there's not a definitive Miss Scarlet. There's not a definitive, you know, anything. So you can kind of recreate them sort of based on the period you want. And I'm a huge fan of the movie from the 80s, you know, with like Tim Curry and Leslie Ann Warren and all those people. So
if I had to be stuck on a desert island, it is for me Clue. It's Clue or Weekend at Bernie's, depending. We do have a real quick question, and we'll circle back because I want to ask you how you got to this how this whole project came to you. But Melinda asks, what is your favorite shout out to the movie that you were able to work into the novel?
Actually, it's coming up in the third book, so.
I like that you have one in the first one where and I think it's Scarlet. Scarlet's like flames.
That's definitely Peacock. I made Peacock do the famous Madeline Kahn line, which I understand was ad-libbed. I feel really unfortunate because before the pandemic, I actually had plans to go up to New York and meet the director of that film. And due to the pandemic, obviously those plans are canceled, and I don't know if they'll ever be.
I like the amount of hopes that I have that you get to have that.
Yeah. He also did like my other favorite movie from childhood, which is My Cousin Vinny. So.
Oh my God, we just watched that. That's
yeah.
amazing. Diana, that would be amazing. Yeah. Another real quick question. Have you seen the episode of Psych that was an homage to Clue?
Oh, hey, Kate, that's my agent. No, I haven't. But I have seen the episode of The Odd Squad that is an homage to Clue, which is like a children's show. It's kind of like the X-Files for kids, but with math. And my daughter loves it. So she's like, Mommy, you have to watch this show. They all go to like a creepy old house and they're all like Mr. Rectangle, Colonel Hexagon, Pentagon, Colonel Pentagon. But
that's ridiculous. That's crazy. I did just write down Psych Clue episode so that I would do it.
I love Dule Hill. Like I haven't really watched a lot of Psych, but I really I love that actor from The West Wing and Holes.
Yeah. I can fix that. I just rewatched The West Wing in an effort to comfort myself.
Every Thanksgiving, my family watches the episode Shibboleth from The West Wing, which is the one where there's the there's the two turkeys about who's going to pardon them, and then there's also Toby and Sam are going to write a detective show about.
And it's the one where with the Chinese
immigrants,
immigrants trying to get seeking religious freedom. It's a good episode. They're all good episodes. When you watch it again in the pandemic, they're all good episodes.
We do it every Thanksgiving. You know how there are like certain Christmas movies you watch? Like that's the Thanksgiving thing we watch is like that episode of television. You
also have in Thanksgiving tradition conversation, you have like the strangest food traditions. Like I mean, Thanksgiving food traditions are storied and everybody has one, but yours are crazy. Share with us, please.
Well, I married into a Maryland family, and it's very Maryland. So every year we bring crab dip to Thanksgiving, and it's one of the most popular dishes, and we eat it while we're waiting for the turkey to finish. And the crab dip recipe was brought to the family by like an ex-spouse of a member of the family. And so now it's like my job to make the crab dip every year. So I do the crab dip. And then, so it's not stuff that I grew up with. It's stuff that I kind of do now, but they're my favorite. The crab dip, I make a kidney bean salad, which is my like in-law's mother's recipe. And it's very 50s and there's like a lot of sour cream in it. It's sort of like salad, kind of salad.
Yeah, my mom's got a few of those too.
Yeah, but it's like radishy and stuff. It's really good. And then
Jello salad.
I actually never had a Jello salad. Somehow,
I will send you my mom's boozy cherry Jello salad. That if it's not on the Thanksgiving table, there's a riot. Like my cousin Caleb loses his mind.
And then I make the Pioneer Woman's mashed potatoes, which is the best because you can make them in advance and then like reheat them the day of. So there's no like mashing the potatoes while you're trying to get at the crab dip, right? Because that's how it goes.
You have both hands free.
Right. And then the final thing that I always bring, and it's super popular in my family, is YA author Maureen Johnson's vegetarian gravy. And I brought it to Thanksgiving at my daughter's elementary school. It was like a potluck Thanksgiving, and I did the gravy, and the PTA contacted me and they were like, we need the recipe for that gravy. We want to put it in the newsletter. Would that be okay? And I'm like, well, you can Google Maureen Johnson's vegetarian gravy if you want to. It's like a publicly available, it's not like a secret recipe or anything. Like, I don't even know if Maureen knows how popular urban DC. Like, it's very popular. Everyone in Tacoma Park now makes vegan gravy from Maureen's recipe.
So what are the, well, I can do that.
There's broth, and then you make a roux, right? Mm-hmm. And then you add nutritional yeast, or nooch, as I think the vegans call it. And it's delicious. It's good. It's like everyone prefers it to turkey gravy. It's so good. Like,
well, I think we've all like had such run-ins with our mothers, our grandmothers, or whatever's terribly lumpy gravy. Sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, but it's terrible.
the nice thing is you can do it even if you're not having turkey, which, you know, we're not, because we're not having like a big Thanksgiving this year. And turkey's kind of de-emphasized in my family. So we can still have our mashed potatoes with as much gravy as we want to, even without a turkey, which is one of the nice things about Maureen's recipe.
I'm seeing it everywhere that Thanksgiving for a lot of people, because they are doing the safe thing and not traveling and staying within their family, their homes, that they're just like, it's a Thanksgiving sides. It's all the sides and all the pies.
Yeah, pies giving. I'm totally down with that.
Giving. Okay, anyway, back to the book. So how did this book come into your life? I mean, outside of like, obviously, you know, making the bed by watching Clue for many, many years as a child, but like, how did it come into your life?
So my agent said, I told my agent I wanted her to find me a work for hire, which is something that's sort of readily available, especially in the YA space. There's just so much licensed work out there, whether you're dealing with, you know, Marvel characters, Star Wars, all that kind of thing. And she said, I have this audition. Do you like Clue? And I'm like, I can recite the entire movie. I love Clue. So I did the audition, and they hired me. And, you know, it's just been a perfect marriage, because I feel like the publisher, Abrams, has just been so great to work with, and that they and I had the same vision for the story. Like we wanted to bring Clue sort of into the modern era, kind of the same way that Riverdale has brought Archie comics into the modern era. Like we wanted to take this kind of like 50s kind of like thing and just sort of like reinvent it for the 21st century. And, you know, we both had the same ideas. And, you know, I've been loving working with my editor there. And it's been so much fun. When you just take it and run.
When you say audition, what, like, how, like, obviously you're not like a theater audition. You're writing something. You're writing.
So they gave me like a premise, like an idea of a version of Clue, and they said, "Can you write 2 chapters based on these characters that we give you?" So I wrote around 1 or 2 chapters. I can't remember, and I wrote those 2 chapters, and I tried to stick as many like movie references in as possible. And then after they hired me, they were like, "Okay, make up your own characters and your own premise."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh, so I'm not doing like this one that you gave me." And they're like, "Oh no, that was just for fun." So that was when they were like, "But we want a boarding school, and we want, you know, all like, you know, certain parameters. Like obviously you have to make the mansion, you know, because that's such a huge part of Clue." So I thought about a boarding school. And so I thought about my cousin in Maine, and I made this boarding school, and I invented a whole history for the boarding school because, you know, mansions just don't appear. And so the mansion in my school, there's the boarding school, and then that particular mansion is a dorm for girls. And what it grew out of was that back before the school was larger, there was like this little boys school, and then there was like a reform school for girls. And reform was very loose because the kind of girls that usually went into reform school weren't necessarily hardened criminals. Like most of the time they were probably moms. Yeah. So that kind of thing. And so it had this kind of history, and now it's but now it's the dorm for the girls at this school, which is no longer a boys boarding school. It's a co-ed boarding school. And so it has this long history that the people don't even really know about, and which informs kind of all the stuff that's going on. So I got to invent all of my own characters and really make them my own, but keep them in the idea of who they are in Clue. Like, because there's been many inventions of Mr. Green, many inventions of Colonel Mustard.
Did you find yourself sort of reverting back to the game you played? Like that, like,
well, I think there are archetypes, right? Yeah. So like, you're not going to make Colonel Mustard somebody who's not involved in the military, right? So Miss Scarlet always has this very outside personality. So I made my Miss Scarlet. She's kind of like the mean girl of the school. And she's sort of like the head mean girl of the school, and she kind of runs everything. So like one part Blair Waldorf, like one part I was very inspired by Mindy Kaling's character on the Mindy Project.
Oh yeah.
And that she was just super brilliant but also kind of bitchy. And
and also had no real boundaries about like what she should know about people.
Right. And I just loved that. And Scarlett's like my favorite character to write, because I refer to her as like my Cordelia Chase, because she just says what she thinks and she doesn't really care, but she kind of, she's not a bad person, but she has very firm opinions about how everyone should live their lives.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things that I liked about this book, and everybody does have a motive for killing Mr. Body.
Yeah, and I have to make Peacock into like she's a tennis star and she's a jock, and that was really fun because it gave me a reason to have her be called Peacock. It's kind of like a sports nickname, All of her fans would like wave peacock feathers, and like she would dye the ends of her hair blue, and it was just sort of like part of the fun, right, of like being this sports star. And then my green is like the scholarship kid, and my Professor Plum is like the top chemistry student on campus, and he has all these things. And then my mustard is a transfer student from a military academy, so he has all this military background. And then Orchid, the aforementioned character that nobody knows about, is also sort of leading a double life. And she's actually one of the characters that I borrowed most heavily from my original audition, because I really liked what I'd come up with her, because the original audition was like based like in Hollywood. And it was sort of at the height of sort of the Me Too scandal and everything going on with Harvey Weinstein and stuff. And so I thought about what if this girl had been a child star and was like running away from that life, and sort of, so she's somebody who had been a movie star as a child, like kind of like a Lindsay Lohan sort of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen kind of thing. And she just kind of was just like, I'm done with that. And so she actually takes on a fake identity and enrolls in like fake parents every day, and like enrolls herself in this boarding school in Maine where nobody knows who she is. And
you give her some big glasses and classic teen, classic teen style.
Yeah, there's this really great scene in The Hall with the Knife where like she's lost her glasses, and she makes some comment, and Vaughn Green is like, "You're not Clark Kent, like that, right? Like with glasses and without glasses." I thought it was sort of like a typically like, she thinks she's fooling a lot more people than she is, I think. And when I was in college, I went to college with a fair number of people who had been well-known actresses like Jordana Brewster and Claire Danes and things like that. And so when they first came on campus, everyone would look at them, but like, after a couple weeks, they were just another student on campus. It wasn't as big of it didn't remain as big of a deal as you think it is going to be.
One of the things that I really loved about the book is one, the realization that like teenagers, like in and of like left to their own devices, are fantastic, unreliable narrators. Like, they're so self-focused, and they're so like, I'm living with a teenager now. Like there's a selfishness that they cannot help. They can't control it, and they just like the world's sort of about them. And so in every one of these characters' points of view, their outside focus is like there's a real quick drop off, so you don't get like a big picture of what's happening. I mean, I think Vaughn Green is probably the best at that. But
Vaughn might also be the most unreliable narrator.
Yeah, Vaughn is keeping a lot of secrets, and and that was another thing I was going to say, is that the building and the school, but mostly Tudor House, has a beautiful backstory that you give us. None of these kids have backstories. So everything is super present, which is really like, it's a page turning device. But the but you get kind of tricked into the fact that you know so much about the school, so you feel like you know them, and then you're like, wait a second, I don't know these people.
Yeah, and they don't know the school, you know, they've just, I mean, I think we're all, I mean, like we say it's a teenage thing, but I think it actually, you know, we're a lot more guilty. Everybody is guilty of thinking about themselves like much more than they realize, and think that other people realize things about them that maybe
Nobody, yeah.
and so it was really fun actually to write, especially after years of writing from like one perspective, because you know, like in romance I think you usually get the hero and the heroine, but like if you're writing chick lit, and then a lot of times if you're writing YA, you're really writing very closely from one perspective, and that's what most of my books have been. So then to write this book where I do 6 perspectives has actually been fun for a mystery, because every time a character got too close to figuring something out, I just end the chapter and then I get in a different character's head, and they're not thinking about that. Like they're thinking of themselves or who they have a crush on, or, you know, whether or not someone's going to find out that they cheated on this test.
So your 6 characters, that had to be like writing from those points of view. That, I mean, that's not an easy feat.
Yeah, but it's gotten easier as I've gotten through the books, because I've really gotten to know them very well. And you know, I did this kind of trick, like sort of from the beginning of my career. I've loved metafiction. In Secret Society Girl, there's a lot of text messages and letters and things like that, and then in footnotes and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then in For Darkness Shows the Stars, it's told largely through letters and things like that. And so for this one, I was like, one character, I have to do metafiction. So all of Peacock's chapters are in the first book, they're all her like workout journals, in which she gets more and more emotional as you know, she gets stressed out. And then the second one,
she's eating protein bars for every.
Yeah, she's eating protein bars. And you know, when I was doing that, I was like very conscious, because I didn't want it to come across as that she was I wanted to make sure that it didn't come across as that she was limiting her diet in any way, but that it was like that, you know, she is so athletic, and I wanted it to be very clear that she's somebody who just wanted to know what her performance was like. Because when I read it, you know, I imagined her being the kind of person who would like obsessively read everything about Serena Williams and be like, what is Serena Williams eating? Like,
now I'm gonna eat that. Yeah, for sure.
That kind of thing. And so I that was something that I wanted to do very carefully, because I know that sometimes when teenagers track their diets, it's in like an unhealthy way. And so as I was writing those sections, I wanted to make sure that her complaints were that she wasn't getting enough protein, she wasn't getting enough whatever, because they are tracked by this storm. And so they have to deal with the food that they have on hand.
Yeah. We have a question. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. If you were casting this as a movie, who would you like to see play each character? Have you thought that far?
I don't know really who the teenage actors are, and usually when they make movies,
it's true. Freddie Prinze Jr.
Either like the same, because I remember like 5 years ago, Shailene Woodley was like in every teen movie or something, and now it's like you've got the Netflix people who are in every like Netflix thing, like you like Kieran Shipka, right, is like in every Netflix kind of like performance. But I think, you know, they cast new people, right, because they're new teenagers, and you know, they're introducing them and things like that. So
like there's got to be a conversation about this being something, this property being turned into something else.
That's like up to Hasbro. You know, they're the, you know, because this is Empire, I don't really deal with any of the rights for that as if I would if it were like
if it was yours,
my own original thing. So yeah, I would love it if they took it and made like a version of the board game that was a tutor. I would love it if they made a movie out of it. Like, but it's theirs to do with what they want to. Like, they own the characters and things like that.
So in your author's note, you with the movie, I'm sorry to go back to the movie, you traveled with it? Like your family took it on vacation?
Yeah, we had this old conversion van. Do you remember what a conversion van? Yeah. like a conversion van, and it had like a little TV in it with like a little VCR, and it was one of the like 5 tapes we had. You know, we had like Ghostbusters, The Empire Strikes Back, Harry and the Hendersons, and Clue.
That is a snapshot of the 80s, if there ever was.
Yeah, no, not gonna lie. My mom would like stick us in the car, and we'd put the seat down in the back so it was like a bed, and we would just watch. I mean, I feel like maybe she's not gonna get arrested for that now, right? Like,
no, totally. Yeah.
Oh,
we were all doing it. We were all rolling around in the back. My childhood was spent. My brother was older than me, and he would not let me be in the bench seat of the station wagon, the second seat. So he would shove me down in the footwells. So I spent I mean, we could really get into the thing. But I spent my childhood in like the footwells of my, like, forget about a seatbelt, forget about a car seat. But we every slumber party, it was a Clue thing. And then Alicia got that VCR game and we played that. And part of your book where like the characters just suddenly start, like the 2 twins, one has a rope and she's just like carrying around a rope. And that's that entire video game, or that entire video. Yeah, it is a video game, but it's like a whatever.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I referenced all the rooms and all the weapons, because everyone has their favorite room, their favorite weapon, their favorite character. And I didn't want to cheat anyone, right? Like if you're a fan of the product, and here's what I feel like, there's a lot of, sometimes there's talk about writing work for hire and people view it in a certain way. You know, it's like people view romance in a certain way, right? And like those people are full of crap, but
it doesn't change the work, right? Like
I think if you don't respect the work, if you don't respect the original product, and you're not a fan of it, that kind of thing is going to show. Because I'm writing this book, yes, for teenagers who I hope are discovering it in bookstores and libraries across the country. But I'm also writing this book for the enormous, 60, 70-year Clue fandom out there. And I want them to pick it up and be like, oh, you know what? Like this person respects the work. They respect the names.
Yeah.
They respect the property, and they're not going to put anything in here that that doesn't make sense. And it's funny because I get to explore some things that I always wondered, like in the wrench.
I have to let my dog in. My dog barks if my door's closed. I'm sorry. Oh no, she's gone.
So in the study with the wrench, if you look at the clue board, the secret passage goes from the conservatory to the lounge, and then from the study to the kitchen. But you're like, well, if that happens, then they have to cross, right? So in the study with the wrench, I explore that. I'm like, where does it cross? And why
is the meeting place?
When I was designing it to make it real, I was like, well, one of them has to go under the other. So I was just like, okay, which one? And I thought about this in the hall of the night. I'm like, which one goes deeper and why? And what would that look like in reality if you're making this board instead of just being this 2-dimensional board, if you're making it into a real space? And so I want to think about that, and I think that other Clue players, I hope that other Clue players have also been like, I wonder where those cross, and I wonder what that means, and I wonder if there's going to be a version. I mean, there's so many versions of the Clue game. Like there's one where the staircase is really a pool, and that's actually a room you can use.
What are these?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. There's very many versions of Clue, and so I wanted to kind of allow for the fact that everybody has a different version in their game closet,
right?
And that it has this like beautiful long history with like different weapons, all kinds of things. But really, like, okay, here's the classic. Here are the 6 weapons. Here are the 6 players, and let's go. And
I felt like you really did. I mean, it was. I have the books and I finished them, and my daughter is panting at my elbow to get them. And I really do feel like you honored them. When you were playing as a kid or as a grown up with your kids, which character are you? Do you have a character that you are every time?
Well, in Guess Who Clue, you just kind of pick a card and you're that character, so you don't really get to pick. When I was growing up, I did have the pool version, the version that had the pool inside of the board case. And I liked the Miss Scarlet from that version because she was super pretty, But it's it's been fun to play because I have the new version too. And in the new version, it's really interesting. Miss Orchid is very she's a really cool character. She's a botanist and she's like a specialist in poisons, which is interesting because poison is not actually
a weapon.
Current Clue game. I'm like, well, that doesn't mean anything because you can't actually poison Mr. Body. That was another thing that was translating into the book very difficult because in real life, it's usually very easy to tell what killed something. If it was like a gun or a rope or a dagger versus like a candlestick, like know how they died. So,
but again, that was another part of like putting the kids kind of, there aren't many adults in the room. So these kids who have, you have this one kid who's come from this military background, but the rest of them, they suddenly are like, oh, like there would be so much. It was all like all of that was very cleverly done. Like they wouldn't actually know.
Yeah, they don't have any forensic knowledge.
Yeah, none.
I think there's one part where Scarlet asked Mustard if he has a gun, and he was like, "Why would I have a gun?" And she's like, "Well, you have a military background." And he's like, "Yeah, background. I'm at school though, so
yeah.
I have a graphing calculator."
So what's next? Are you writing more Clue books?
So this is a trilogy, and the story concludes at the book that's coming out next fall, which is in the I can't say with the I also can't say.
I was just trying to guess. Okay, no, okay, it's got to be the rope. I think it's got to be the rope, right? Anyway,
that'll be the end of the story. And then I don't know what's next for Clue. I know that I've loved working with Abrams. So if they ask me to do more Clue stuff, I'd be like, yeah, sign me up, and things like that. But I don't know. It's a weird time. I gotta finish this one. It's like a little bit late right now. But.
Well, it is a pandemic, and
it is a pandemic, right?
You are. I think you are teaching like kindergarten and fourth grade, right? In your, like it's a real
kindergarten. I kind of feel like the fourth graders on our own, but but the so that's happening, and then I just kind of have to figure out sort of what I'm doing next. I was supposed to do NaNoWriMo, but November in America has been like a really stressful month.
That spilled over everywhere.
I wrote on November 1st, and then I wrote on November 2nd, and then on Tuesday, November 3rd, we had an election here in the United States, and I have not touched my computer.
Yeah, it is hard.
For the last like 20 days. So that's going on here.
Up to the election, I was like, I couldn't get any work done. And then like the night of the election, and I know that it's ongoing and that nothing has changed, the tensions or the divisions or any of those things, but the election happened, everything got called that needed to be called so that Biden could win. And I just stopped paying attention. I was just able to turn it all off and finish a book.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was, and it needed to happen, but it was
either they've been like, I'm burying myself in my books and I'm working, or they've been like, I haven't touched it. I did a like massive reread of like historical romances that I love, essentially. Like I did this reread of like all the Courtney Milan Brother Sinister books. And then I did like a bunch of like books that I loved from the 80s, like how I got into romance, because I'm going on Andy Christopher's Drunk Romance History. Because
fun! What book are you going to do?
I'm going to be doing Joanna Lindsay's Hearts Aflame, which is like the first romance I ever read, which actually totally holds up.
I am dubious. She doesn't know this yet. I've been invited, but I'm going to go on, and I want to go on with Skye Warren and do To Have and to Hold.
Yeah.
Is that the right one?
No, I think okay, so now we're like talking about other people's podcasts, right? But I think she needs to make it like a real for real podcast. Like I think it would just take off.
Yeah, no, she yeah.
In every weekend. I'm like, Andy, this is the best.
It is. It's a commitment, right? I mean, it's hard. It's a commitment. And if, you know, if your brain is not letting you commit right now.
Right. No.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's got a lot of legs.
It's so fun. I watch it all the time. I can't get enough.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. For those of you that don't know, Andy J. Christopher, who's a romance novelist, does an Instagram interview series called
Drunk Romance History.
Drunk Romance History. So she has a guest on that.
That's like Drunk History, but with old
drunk and tells the plot line of their favorite like old school romance novel. And Andy doesn't read them, right? Like she doesn't read them before. Like she allows herself to just be sort of like educated by this drunk.
I have no idea. I mean, it's depending on the guest, but like, I mean, Andy's super fun, and she's one of the last persons that I went out to drink with before we weren't allowed to go out drinking with anyone because we both lived and I really can't wait till this is all over and I can like meet her new puppy and stuff.
Yeah, there is a long list of things that will be happening when this is all over. That's for sure. But I do want to say I just loved these books. And for those of you out there who have kids in your lives, buy the books for your teenage children, but read them first because it is like this delightful. Like it just brings you back to the game. It brings you back to the movie.
I did try to keep them funny. Like they're about murder, but they're not very dark. They're mad.
No. Yeah, they're not dark. Yeah, they're really delightful. And I thank you so much for taking the time on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
This was so much fun.
I appreciate you being here.
Right, well, cheers.
Yeah, cheers. I drank mine. I got cherries at the bottom. Thanks everybody out there. Stay home. Stay safe, read a book, have a drink. Bye, guys.